Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, I'm Krista Gamble. We are here today for Stop the Email, Submitting Items to the Agenda with Tyler Meeting Manager. In the class description, joining us today is this description and objective. We today are focusing on city agenda items and ways that we can improve the efficiency of your meetings and remove some of the email and paper with your process that may be in place today. Again, I'm the product owner of Tyler Meeting Manager. I'll be taking us through the presentation today. To get us started, I wanted to talk a little bit about our new normal. As you guys know, we are doing this conference remotely. COVID-19 has given us a lot of challenges. So let's talk about a few of those today. Now, this is where I would usually poll the audience and ask, what are challenges that you have faced? Because we are doing this remote and this is pre-recorded, I've done a little bit of that research ahead of time and gotten some feedback from users about what they have handled in the last year. So some of the things that come to mind are attendance, questions, discussion, masks, social distancing, special emergency meetings. Yep, the different types of meetings that we have matter. Public comment. This is a big one. Open Meetings Act or the Sunshine Act. Yes. How do we handle that in our new normal? Teleconferencing, voting, motions, roll call, all of that is harder in this new way of doing things. Notifications, that's a big one, right? How do I get notified when I'm working from home? Email, streaming, submissions, yep, how do you submit items to the agenda item? And I love that somebody brought that one up because that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Cameras, microphones, mute buttons, definitely. All of these things are challenges that we are facing today. So one of the things that I gather from this list is that it's more than moving to video. Yes, you and I are now virtual watching a video from our own home, but it's more than just that. It's also moving the paper. The paper has now gone from an office to email. So what can we do in submitting items and help move that paper to a way that doesn't look like this on our desktops? So what are some of the sources of agenda items? It may be from a lot of different sources. Before COVID, you might have a stack of papers on your desk. You might have people that come up to your desk and hand you things constantly throughout the day. You may have hallway conversations, say, hey, did you hear about this report that just came through or this new plan change that's happening? Those kind of hallway conversations where people pull you in. Email has always been important. People sending you, hey, here's the latest report. Can you add this? I think that's pretty common. Appointments. You may have some well-structured appointments with your board members, either with the public and the board or you and the board, just to make sure you're staying on top of what should be discussed at the next meeting. And forms. You may have a structured process to say, if you want to submit an item, you must fill out this form so that I can collect this information in these fields. So there's a lot of different ways that you're collecting this information and gathering the agenda items that you need for your agenda. And Tyler Meeting Manager is one way that we can simplify this process and collect from all of those sources and instead use one. So let's talk about our agenda for our presentation today. First of all, I want to talk about who can submit agenda items. Who are the submitters of Tyler Meeting Manager? Then we can talk about how we submit agenda items. That may be routine items as the clerk, and we're going to focus on the new items that are coming in. So as one of those submitters in our Who section, who can submit agenda items? And then we're going to talk about some special cases. There's always special cases that don't fit the typical mold. So first of all, submitters. Who submits items to the agenda? There's three main people that submit items. The first one are department heads. These people have their departments and they have routine or informational items that they're submitting to the agenda. That's going to be financial reports, updates for their department, maybe HR updates or committee events that are happening. They're usually submitting these routinely, so every meeting, every month, every quarter. And so these items are submitted by those department heads and are more just, hey, this is what's happening in my department. Now, your board members are going to be submitting discussion items. And there might be a specific section header on your agenda where board members bring up these items. And it may be something like a nomination or a plan change. But these items are typically items that the board members are all sitting in one room. This is their opportunity to ask questions, voice their opinion, and hear from each other and talk about these items openly. It may be that these discussion items are something that comes from a department head and that was learned from some of the information that was presented. But typically these discussion items are things that you need to learn more about before you can take any action on them. That could be awards, budgets, again, nominations, or planning routes. And finally, clerks. It may be you that's watching this presentation, that you're the one that creates most of these agenda items, but most of the items that clerks are creating are action items. So anything that was informational or discussed as a discussion item, now we're ready to act upon it, which usually means a vote is needed. These kind of items can be policy changes, ordinances, budget allocations. So these things are typically already discussed at a previous meeting, and we're ready to now act upon them. So now that we've talked about these different personas that can submit items, let's talk about how to submit items. And before we dive too far into this, I want to talk about our routine agenda items. Everything on the agenda that is on every agenda should be part of your template. Those types of items like Pledge of Allegiance, invocation, adjournment, executive session, those items should be part of your template and not take up any of your time to create them on every agenda as a separate item. And if you would like to learn more about how we, Tyler Meeting Manager, handles those routine items, I invite you to join us for our agenda management class. It's called Prioritizing Your Agenda with Tyler Meeting Manager. All right, so let's talk about our typical submissions. So this is, again, any new information that is being presented, whether that be a discussion item or an informational item. Again, the first time someone's kind of looking at this new information. So first, I want to collect that new information I want to submit it with all of the attachments. I want to then present it to the board and witness a vote to ratify those changes. So we're going to go through an example of how to submit one of these typical submission items. So with that, we're going to pop over to a demonstration in Tyler Meeting Manager. Okay, so I've started us on our homepage so we can see, we jump to today. The next city council meeting is scheduled for Thursday. I, as a submitter, have the ability to add new agenda items, and I can see anything that's in progress on my homepage. So let's start with that typical scenario. I'm going to create a new agenda item. Okay, let's take, for example, planning annex discussion. So there's a new subdivision. That is requesting to be annexed with the city of Tyler. So I, as a submitter, need to submit both a title and a description. My title is going to be on every agenda item, and that usually is like a resolution number, or it could be something general like what I've done here, which is we're just going to discuss the annex documentation and the plans surrounding it. Now, your description field, this is where you can elaborate on what exactly we're going to be talking about. So tell me about that annexing plan. Do you have those plan documents? Is it the first time something like this has come up? Are they requesting to be annexed like another subdivision or with another subdivision? Any information in this description field can be copy pasted. So if you have an email or a Word document where you have this information, you can copy and paste it into here. The field does expand as needed if you need the additional space to enter, again, that detailed description. And this is also helpful if you need to follow a specific form to say, I have financial information, this is coming from this department, it's coming from the planning department, and this is the, again, third time that this has happened. There's no impact to the financials. Maybe there is, right? Maybe this will impact the taxes and we need to discuss that. Okay, as you can see, there is a spell checker built in. And once I have my title and description entered, I then can select my meeting assignment. So here I can see all of the meeting types that are available in my application. We today are going to be looking at the city council meeting, and the next one is scheduled for March 25th, so it is this Thursday. You can see that we have scheduled out all of the meetings for the first half of the year. So if I, as a submitter, need to discuss this annexation in a month or in 3 months after I have some of that initial paperwork completed, I am able to submit this item at any point in time for that future meeting. Also, again, we're just focusing on the city council meetings today, but you can see that we have a variety of committee meetings, historical meetings, special and regular meetings. All of these can be handled within Meeting Manager. And again, if you attend our agenda class, you can learn a little bit more about how these different meeting types differ in their templates and in the management of that content. Okay, as a submitter though, I just care about that next meeting. So let's submit this item to the 25th. Next, I can select my agenda section. So what section header does this belong under? This is very useful to, again, separate out what needs to be old business or unfinished business versus new business. So all of your new items, like what we're going through today, are typically under this new business. This is following Robert's Rules of Order, but you may have some different headings and section headings in your area. That is, completely up to what the agenda creator has made. So me as a submitter, I know that when I go in here, these are the agenda sections that I have available to me that I can choose from. Again, if you have this separated out by, hey, we have actually financials and admin and public works, like all have their separate sections on the agenda, you'd be able to then select that here as a submitter. All right, the next field is the agenda item presenter. In this field, you can type in who may be presenting this information at the meeting. It defaults to me, myself. I'm signed in as Steve, the submitter today, but I can type in here, maybe it's Hannah with the all right. So that is all the typed information that we've added into our agenda item so far. The next information we want to talk about is attachments. This is where things get really exciting. If I scroll down, we have 4 options to add attachments. One is upload, scan, search, and drag and drop. I'm going to go over upload with us today, and then I'll touch on those other areas as we go along. So if I click upload, I am searching my computer, and that can also be a shared drive, to look for those attachments, those annex documents that may be relevant to this proposal that we're talking about today. So here I have a resolution. I can see that document here. It's a PDF, so I'm just going to add and upload that attachment. The other options for you are scan. So if you have a scanner at home or connected to your computer, you can scan directly into Tyler Meeting Manager. Next, you can search, and I'm going to show you that one in another example here later. And then drag and drop. Drag and drop is very useful if you're having trouble letting go of those emails. If you are still getting emails from other folks within your department, you can just drag and drop directly from that email into Tyler Meeting Manager. So you don't need to save it off separately to your hard drive and be worrying about version control. All right, so I can go ahead and submit to the agenda. That document that you saw here, the annexation of North Town Resolution 252, that document, by clicking submit, is being sent to Tyler Content Manager. Tyler Content Manager is what Tyler Meeting Manager and a lot of other applications at Tyler use for storage of documents. So that's Encode, Munis, New World, all of them integrate with Tyler Content Manager. And so if you know how to edit documents, add stamps to documents, all of that can be handled the same way. We can reuse those documents. Okay. So that document now has moved into my recent tabs here. So if I need to go back and reference it again, it is at the top. You can see that it is assigned and it's ready for that agenda. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's go ahead and reference our calendar here. That March 25th date is the City Council regular meeting here. if the agenda is started, I can go ahead and click on that, and I'm taken to the agenda so I can see what else is going to be discussed as a part of that entire agenda. Again, I can't change anything on there, but I can go to this page to look at it, and I can see that there's also a budget report on here, some water management discussions, and then here's my new business item with my annexation. So again, this is just viewing that agenda and how my agenda item that I submitted is now part of this agenda. Now, the final thing I'd like to show you today is if I go back to my calendar, I'm going to go to January 26th. So if I go to this Connect preparation and click on this meeting, this I wanted to show you is an example of a agenda, minutes, and video that are all completed. And if you'd like to learn more about how those agendas get posted, how those minutes get created, and how we can utilize video in this new world through Tyler Meeting Manager, please feel free to attend our other classes. These documents, again, are posted, so if my item is a part of it, I can click print, and I can then print the final version, which looks like something like this. Okay, so that is agenda item creation, the basics. So let's pop back to our presentation here. What are the benefits of using Tyler Meeting Manager for agenda item submission? The first thing is it's a single source. As we saw earlier in this presentation, there are 6 or maybe more different ways of adding agenda items that you're dealing with today. And so if everyone is then using Tyler Meeting Manager as their single source of adding new items, that can really streamline your management of the next agenda. It can also reduce email traffic. So again, the back and forth that you have, or the mixture of emails that you're getting of new agenda items with some of those other discussions or hallway conversations, it really reduces that by, again, keeping it all in one place on TMM. It also helps with changes. So it removes formatting conflicts. I know a lot of clerks and agenda organizers are worried about the numbering and the different formats, bold, italics, indentions, stuff like that you're constantly worrying about. With Tyler Meeting Manager, it removes all of that. So those title and description fields will fall nicely into place with the template that you have created. So it really removes that, not only for the clerk, but for you as a submitter as well. You don't have to worry about, did I do it right? You just fill out the form. It also helps with audit tracking of attachments. So your attachments that you are attaching, like our annexation document, if we get a signature, if there's a change to that document, anything that happens, that back and forth that you have with the clerk, by using Tyler Content Manager combined with Tyler Meeting Manager, you can remove all of that email, all of that communication back and forth, and just let the submitter handle those changes themselves. And whenever the agenda is ready, it will know which document, it will pull that latest version, and you'll be ready to go. And third, deadlines. TMM helps you organize drafts for later. So you saw the drafts tab there. I had a few items, and I'll show you that here in a second, that you can submit those now and use them later. You can reuse items too if you have something that is recurring and always happens every year during budget season. You can just have that item there waiting for you, and it helps remind you about those upcoming deadlines. And finally, by assigning your agenda item to a meeting at the creation, you can ensure that you will not miss that deadline. You'll see it in front of you. There's not a mistaken email that you overlooked. The chances of missing those deadlines is a lot fewer, and you can stay on top of your work. So those are the benefits of TMM and using it for the typical new item submissions. So now let's talk about some special cases. So what kinds of special cases are there? Again, I'd love to poll you for your answers to this question. Some of the things that I've learned in my discussion and by polling some folks before my presentation today, you'll see repeats, definitely a big one, something that is an informational item that we talk about multiple times, or I'm a department head, I have a financial report that I provide every month. Pending items. Yep, the clerk is concerned about items that are rolling from one meeting to another. Yep. Closed session. That's a great one. So executive session, closed session, any of those types of section headers or parts of the meeting that the board steps out and has some confidential items that they're discussing away from the public. We definitely need to handle those cases. That's a big one. All right, and then you also have a few items on here I'm seeing, like last minute, postponed, unfinished, those kind of items. You never want to see those, but I know it happens to see last minute items come through. Hey, there's a high priority, maybe even a special meeting, right, that you need to discuss something new on. That's a high priority. So how can we get those seen and added to the agenda in the nick of time? So let's go ahead and talk through some of those use cases. The first one is repeat items. So I have a postponed agenda item. It was discussed at our last meeting. It requires a second reading to allow for public comment before the board acts and takes a vote. So in this case, we're going to show you how to copy an agenda item, add new attachments, and then edit the previous attachment text. All right, so let's pop over to Tyler Meeting Manager and look at repeat items. So I'm going to start on my home page. And I'm going to go to my drafts area. You can see I have a couple items in here. I have an annual staffing report, and I have something else I'm working on, which is a 5K fun run that is requesting some funding. This staffing report, though, this is something that is definitely a repeating item that I'm going to care about. So while this is a placeholder, I'm ready to copy this item and submit this one to the next agenda. So what I can do here is use my button here and I can copy it. So when I use that copy button, it's copying over the title and description, and it's also copying over my the information that's a part of that. This particular one did not have any attachments. It would have added those as well. So, okay, now we're ready to assign this one to my next city meeting. So here's my 325. And this one goes under my reports area section header. So great, we have that. So now let's go ahead and add an attachment. So again, this is a staffing report. We talk about this every year. So let's reference what staffing was last year in addition to the staffing changes that are being made. So I'm going to click search here, and this is going to search all of my existing documents that are on Meeting Manager. All right, we have a search box here. I also have an advanced search, and this is really helpful in the text search. So here I have a text search, which searches the full document. So not just the typed information, it's going to OCR and search the entire document. So if I type in something generic like finance, Great. I can filter and say, okay, I only care about the meetings, the meeting attachments that are about financial reports, not the agendas. Obviously, we talk about those items, and you can see, oh, this is a great one. Here's the financial annual report that includes some of the staffing salary information that I want to talk about. So I can check that. I can click attach. So now it's adding that attachment to my agenda item so that I can, again, reference it. It's one document stored in one location. There's no copying. There's no email associated with that at all. I'm just going to copy and repeat that item. All right, now it's ready for that 325 meeting. So let's go ahead and submit it to the agenda. Okay, so that is repeat items. Now the second case, let's talk about confidential items. So I have a new hire that needs approval from the board, and while the candidate information is public, some of the human resources documents need to be restricted. So what I'm going to demo for you today is how we can mark an attachment as confidential, and it prevents the public packet from listing or viewing that confidential document. So let's pop over to Tyler Meeting Manager for this example. I'm going to create a new agenda item. Okay, so this is an HR new hire. All right, so this again is something we want to talk about at our next City Council meeting. I'm going to assign it to 325. This is definitely new business. So I'm going to go to upload. I'm going to go find those two documents. So I have, here's a resume that I have. And then let's add one of these reports as well. All right, so I've got two attachments here. Now, let's say this resume is something that we want to keep restricted to give to the board members that are attending, but not share publicly as part of the full agenda packet. So if I hover over this item, I can set it as confidential. You can see it gives me a little lock symbol. So now when I submit this item to the agenda, again, it's going to save both of these attachments to TCM. One of them is going to be marked as confidential while the other isn't. When I go to print an agenda, I will have the ability as the organizer or as a submitter, again, I'm presenting this to the board, I will have the option to select whether I want to print a public version or a confidential version. I'm going to show you that here in a moment. And the at-home jitters. All right. So let's go to that area on our calendar where we had that past meeting in January. So this one, again, we had an available agenda ready to print, and I can print both a summary or a packet. And you can see when I'm logged in, I do have the ability to print either a confidential version or a public version. So what that means is that you can include all of these confidential attachments that the attorney might be looking at and reviewing that are part of executive session, all on one agenda. And your public packet is not going to include those items. This makes it a lot easier for you and for the submitter to be tracking your agenda submissions all in one place instead of having to tackle multiple documents that are part of the agenda, documents that aren't, and having to distribute that virtually. Okay, so we'll go back to our presentation here and talk about our last special case, which is last minute items. I have an agenda item that is time sensitive and needs to be reviewed by the board immediately. I want to add an approver to speed up the approval of my agenda item. All right, so to handle this case, back in Tyler Meeting Manager, let's go ahead and close out of here. Let's create another agenda item. So what's a type of item that may be escalated recently? Maybe a COVID report. All right, so we have a health and safety recommendation coming from the state. We want to align with the other cities and the county on these guidelines. And again, our spell checker will correct me. Thank you. All right, so we want to select our meeting assignment. And this one might even require a special meeting, right? So if I know that it needs to go to that special meeting, I can select that one. Otherwise, I can again select my 325 and let the clerk decide if this is important enough to escalate to a special meeting. All right, my agenda section header, this is also new business. Okay, so I'm going to upload that COVID report and health and safety report here. Here's these OSHA guidelines. Oh, here's a health and safety plan. Let's add that one. All right, so here's our health and safety report. Now, this does submit to the agenda. If this is an agenda that's already finalized, or again, I really need the attention of the organizer to know this now, but I don't want to do that by sending a whole bunch of emails. What I can do is on my workflow tab, add an approver. So this pops out, gives me my options to say, yes, Krista, I do need her attention on this right away. So I can add her as an approver. So now it says submit to approval. And this item is going to go to Krista, me, for review before it goes to the agenda. So then I can make those decisions. There's a lot of notifications that are around this option, which is a great solution to those small cities that, again, you just want to escalate this just a little bit, get people involved sooner rather than waiting for the next time that they're in Tyler Meeting Manager. This can add that information sooner. So I'm going to press submit for approval. This item is going to go to my pending homepage tab, and I'll show you that here in a moment. And I am also, ding, getting an email as well. So that email is not going to include a version of that attachment, right? It's going to link me and say, hey, you have a new approval item. You need to look at this item. What's great about this too, if we go full circle back on our homepage here, you can see I have two actions myself as a submitter. I have two items that are rejected. So these items here, I have a renewal of fiber line contract, and those items have been routed back to me. And so I can manage those as a submitter to say, oh, I didn't fill out the form properly. I didn't add the right attachments. I'm missing a signature. All of that information can be tracked within Tyler Meeting Manager and on this homepage without a lot of emails, without trying to manage versions between systems, without those hallway conversations that are now moving virtually. Okay, so to wrap us up, talk about how Tyler Meeting Manager can help you today and help with submitting items. First, it can help you become efficient with agenda item management. You can manage more than just one item at a time, and you can handle that on your homepage as either a submitter or a clerk. It reduces the time to complete an agenda. Everyone wants to receive that information as soon as possible, and so for you, it reduces a lot of the heavy lifting of agenda item management then you can help complete that agenda sooner and help the clerk out so that you can understand if you're going to be on that agenda or not. It helps streamline the submissions made by your agenda item submitters. So again, any of those 6 ways that people might be submitting items today can really improve that process. And if you want to see more about the workflow that's available here and some of the approval reject options, I'm going to be touching on that in the county version of this presentation. Counties are usually a lot larger, they have more departments, and so they're handling workflow and those complex situations a little bit more than the simple case that we reviewed today. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. And finally, the benefits of using TMM is to handle any type of new agenda item in this new normal. So thank you very much for your time today. This has been my pleasure to share with you in our Virtually Possible Connect 2021. We look forward to communicating with you, learning more about Tyler Meeting Manager, and having us all get through this together. I hope you have a wonderful conference. Thank you.